morning. We're live. You'll get your notifications. We're live. Tune on in. Be sure and go into the comment section so Mr. Joey and Mr. Mark know who's here. And we've got some people on. We'll give everybody a couple minutes to sit down and get turned on and tuned in and comment to us that you're there so we know who's here. We're doing a very cool watercolor today. Mr. Joey's getting set up. Mr. Mark's getting set up. Let us know if you're here.
And Lydia and Patrick.
Hi Lydia, hi Patrick. Mr. Joey pantomimes to me from behind the camera so he doesn't interrupt.
Michaela.
Oh, Michaela's on. That's what Joey was trying to pantomime to me. Michaela's name's up here because we drew your name out of the hat last week. We're not out of the hat, out of our big pot. Do I have Sophia and Casey on?
Yep.
Hi Sophia. Hi Casey.
Emily.
Hi Emily. I feel like I know Emily.
Nick.
Nick's on. Hi, Nick. We are doing the coolest watercolor today. See my bunny rabbit? I love him. I can't wait to paint one with you guys. I had such fun painting this one. This is really going to teach us and let you see, since it's kind of a simple painting, we'll really get to play with the watercolor. Look at all the colors in my bunny rabbit. Of course, I don't know if I've ever seen a bunny rabbit these colors in real life, but that's the fun of being the artist. You make your bunny whatever colors you want, because we have red, yellow, and blue in our pots of paint. Those are our primary colors, so we ought to be able to make a bunny rabbit any color we want today. So let us know when you're there.
Happy Good Friday.
Happy Good Friday. You celebrate Holy Week. Last night was Maundy, Thursday. Today's Good Friday, and we have Easter coming. It's kind of easy to lose track of days when we're home on an unusual schedule. So, used to be that today was the end of the week for us, and tomorrow was our day to sort of relax. We always came in and worked in the studio anyway, but we got to sort of relax. Now, tomorrow is like our busiest day of the week. Mr. Joey and Mr. Mark and I are in here stuffing bags. So if you have not ordered your bag, please go online now and order your bag. It's a lot easier for us to have bags ready for pickup tomorrow if we get the orders in today. So if you haven't thought of doing that, be sure and do that. You won't want to miss next week. We have a whole set of colored pencils going home in your activity bags next week. So make sure Mom goes on and orders your bag, or Dad. And that way it'll help us. We won't be having to check the computer so much during the day tomorrow while we're stuffing bags. So let's see. We got people signed in. Who have I not seen? Michaela's here. Emily's here. Nick's here. Lydia, Patrick. I saw Sophia, Casey.
We've done every day.
Who do we usually see? Do I have Quinn or Reagan and Peyton on? Who else do we usually see? Eva usually does this on a later schedule. My sister. Is my sister on? Hey, Deb. My sister in Ohio. Joey says no.
Yes, she was.
She had to stop at the store for something essential, and she bought herself a watercolor set. So she gets to do the bunny rabbit with watercolor today.
She just commented.
Who else should we have tuned on
Meg.
so far?
Meg just signed on.
Oh, I think my niece is there. Anybody else?
Not that she shouldn't be working.
Let's see. If you want to be gathering equipment that you're going to need today, today's easy. Should be your last piece of paper in your activity bag. It's a piece of watercolor paper. You need our watercolor paper. And you need your brush. You should have a round brush somewhere. Those of you that have had bags for a number of weeks, we had round brushes in the beginning. We don't need that big, wide, fat, kind of scrudgy looking brush. We need this little round brush today. If you've just got a new bag, you've got a little plastic sleeve on it like this. So pull that off. We're going to use our round brush today. And remember, you saved your styrofoam plate. You might have rinsed yours off and have a nice clean plate. I just left my watercolor that was left on my plate on here, because when I touch that with a little bit of water, it's going to turn right back into watercolor. So your styrofoam plate, it's okay if it's all clean. And you need your 4 pots of paint. Your blue and your red and your yellow and your black. I'm going to use a little bit of the black. You'll notice you didn't have much black paint in your pot, because we don't need much black paint. So we need your 4 pots of paint, your styrofoam plate, your piece of watercolor paper, and your brush. And then at your house, you need to find yourself a container of water and get a paper towel. Napkin, paper towel. We'll dab our brush on this. When you do watercolor, we want to use enough watercolor. Sometimes in parts of this, we're going to work on just painting the watercolor on and blending it. But in other parts, we're going to wet, like in his ears, we're going to wet the paper first. You don't use a lot of water. So that's why we have our paper towel here. Mr. Mark's making squeaky noises with our old door here. So has everybody got their pots of paint? You got your styrofoam plate? You got a paper towel and a container of water? I actually think I got everything today. I don't need to send Mr. Joey running for anything.
Ava just got on.
Hi, Ava. We need your piece of watercolor paper. We're going to draw the rabbit on here first, so you can draw right along with me. Oh, I didn't get everything I need, Mr. Joey. I need a new piece of watercolor paper over there. So we're going to draw a rabbit first. He's a really simple draw when we look at him. Yeah, I had torn two off. Okay, so I got my piece of watercolor paper here. We're going to draw a rabbit first. We got most people tuned in. Okay, so I think I'm going to let Mr. Joey just pull the camera on in. It'll be easier for you to see. We're going to move the watercolor out of the way for a minute while we draw first. Okay. Okay, this is our rabbit. Let Mr. Joey and I get situated here. The table's still a little wet. Okay, this is our rabbit we're going to draw. If I sit him up like this, is that okay, or should we try to do side by side?
Either way.
Okay. There we go. Okay, how about we do this? Can we see over here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, it'll be easier if I... Okay, there we go. Okay, oops, I forgot, you need your pencil. And if you want your eraser out, you can get your eraser. So make sure you got a pencil. I think most of you probably have kept your pencils right there by you anyway. So if you got your pencil, we're going to find the middle of the paper. Got the middle of the paper. Our little rabbit's head here. His head and his shoulders here are going to take up the bottom half of the paper. We're going to leave almost the whole top half of the paper for his ears, because the coolest thing about rabbits are their big, big, long, floppy ears. I don't know if anybody out there watching has rabbits. Somebody that used to be here at the studio has rabbits, and now I can't remember who. So send us a little comment. Let us know if you've got a rabbit. Tell me if any of your rabbits look like mine. Don't think I've ever seen a blue and pink rabbit, though. So find about the middle of your paper. This is where we're going to start the rabbit's head. So about the middle of my paper is right along in here. And we're going to draw the top of this rabbit's head first. The top part of his head, like the top third of his head, is almost like a little rounded square rectangle here. Then we're going to give him these big fat cheeks. So we're going to start by giving him just a little bit of a curve. Now he doesn't have a big dome head, so we don't want a really big round top to his head. It's almost flat, but it's got a little bit of a curve. So here's the middle of my paper. I'm going to stick this rabbit right in the center of my paper. Usually I don't do that. But here's the middle of my paper, and remember, I'm going to press a little harder than I want you to. You want to press lightly with your pencil because we want the pretty watercolor to show most of it. So you don't need to press hard. I'm going to press hard so you can see my lines. If I draw right here, is this good?
Morgan and Garrett have a rabbit.
Oh, does your rabbit look like mine, Morgan? Oh, probably not. It's probably not pink and blue, is it? What kind of rabbit is it, Morgan? Type in and let us know what kind of rabbits you have. I know there's different kinds of rabbits. There's really giant big rabbits, and there's dwarf rabbits, and that's about my limited knowledge of rabbits. Okay, so right in the middle of your paper here, we're going to put the top of his head. We want it just to have the slightest little curve to it. So I'm going to put just a little curve right there. Just the slightest little frown to our curve. And remember, I want you to press lightly because we want to see all the pretty watercolor, not your pencil line so much. Now, the sides of his head almost come straight down. They go out just a little bit on an angle. So we're going to put the sides of his head coming down like this. I need to be able to look and see what I'm doing here. Okay. Is that better? Oh yeah, that helps me. Okay, so I got the sides of his head here. Now, right where his big fat cheeks are going to start here, this is where we're going to put his little eyes. Now, his eyes are like a skinny little football shape. So they're actually going to curve in on the side of his head just a little bit. So I'm going to put a little curve in on each side. I kind of want them to match up. Okay, so see if they're kind of across from each other. Give a little curve in, and then they're going to get a little curve on this outside too. They look really weird till we paint them in, but I really like his cute little eyes. Okay, now here's how big the top part of his head was. If I compare that to the bottom half, we want his big old cheeks to go down even farther than the size of his head here. So I've got this nice little curve, and it's going to curve right around to get his nose in here. So it's almost like I'm making sort of a letter J. But I'm going to come down first before I put his cheek in here. I want to make sure his cheeks kind of mate in the middle of his head. So we line his little triangle nose up in the middle of his head. So give yourself a really light line right down from the middle of his head here. See how I made a really light line here? Okay. So now I'm going to put this nice big fat cheek in here. So I'm going to come over here. And I'm going to make a big old curved cheek on this side. I'm going to have it come up and meet right on that middle line that we did. And then I'm going to come on this other side and kind of make this cheek match. Okay? And if they don't match exactly, you can kind of look at them now, kind of even them up. There we go. Look like a rabbit yet? Not quite, does it? Looks a little odd. I think it'll help. We're going to give him his little nose. Rabbits have these tiny little pink noses. They don't exactly look like a triangle, But for our purposes with drawing, we're going to give him this cute little triangle nose. I'm going to make the top of it a little bit of a curve. That helps it look like it's really fitting on his nice curvy little fat cheek area here. So give him a little triangle for his nose up here. It's actually kind of a big triangle. Don't make his nose too tiny, because his big pink nose on here is pretty cute. Okay, so we gave the triangle nose here. We made the top of the triangle, the flat part here, to have a little curve to it. Now, since we don't want our bunny rabbit's head to just float in the middle of the page, we're going to give him a little bit of shoulders here. Now, we don't want his shoulders to be too close in. We don't want him to have too skinny of a neck. So we're going to come about halfway over on his fat cheek here. And I'm just going to give him a nice little curve down that way. I'm going to go halfway over on this fat cheek and give him a little curve down. Okay, does your bunny rabbit have a body? I'm going to go back in here while I'm waiting for everybody to get their bodies on and erase that line I made down the middle of his head, because I don't need that on there. Okay. Ready to make some ears. I'm going to show you some fun ways to make. I like seeing my rabbit with his floppy ear over here. Now, do you notice on his ears, they're very long. We're going to take them almost all the way to the top of the paper. They come from each side of his top of his head here. We don't want them coming out of the side of his head, so we're going to put them over here at the edges of the top of his head. And they don't quite come to a point. We want a little bit of space at the bottom of his ear. And then I'm going to have my ears get nice and fat as they go out, and then they come to a point. Now, your ear could go straight up. You could make this ear fold over. You could make this ear just kind of flop over to the side. You could make both ears flop over if you want. So if you want to draw a straight ear, we're going to draw that first, and then I'm going to show you over here how to draw a folded ear. So if you want both your ears to fold, then watch just a minute. I'm going to come here to the top of his head, over here at the corner of the top of his head. I'm going to make this outside line here first. So I'm going to come up, and I'm going to make it go over that way just a little bit. I'm going to give him really, 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 really giant ears, because I think it's fun to do the watercolor in his ears. Then I'm going to come from this point. I want the end of his ear to kind of look like a point. So here, I'm going to keep it close to it. Going to curve it out in the middle, but I'm going to come right back in here so it gets a little narrow, like about as wide as your finger here. That's going to be fun to paint with our watercolor. Now, if we're going to put another ear on him, I'm going to come to the same spot. This is the top of his head, and where the top of his head starts to go down to the side over here at the corner, I'm going to put this ear on. But this ear, I'm only going to go part way up, and I'm going to go almost flat across the top and come back down, because I want this ear to fold over. So I'm going to come up, part way up to here. Now, the top, instead of this coming to a point, it flopped over. So we see kind of the flat top. Gets a little bit of a curve in the middle of it, because he's got these nice soft ears. So I'm from up here, I'm going to make this nice little diagonal line. I'm going to make it a little curvy in the middle of my diagonal line. So I'm going to come across and curve down a little and come back up. I'm going to make this side go down here. So this side's going to come down to the point, and then I'm going to curve it back up. I'm aiming for this corner here, except I'm not going to connect it. So once you make your little diagonal going down where the fold is, give a little dip in the middle of your diagonal. Then we're going to come down here. It went almost straight down, but it angled out just a little bit. Get your corner here and then curve it back up like you're aiming for this corner here where it folded. Just don't go all the way. Now, if we could see underneath this ear, if I folded his ear back up, this would be where the side was coming down, right? So if my side was coming down right about here, I would start seeing it again. I'm going to bring it back in. I want this width here, about the width of your finger, to be about the same as over here. Do they look exactly the same? Nah, but that's okay. If I felt like this one was a little too skinny, I could decide I could come over here, maybe see a little of the outside edge of his ear. Joey thinks my ears are too fat.
Just that one.
He says now this ear's too fat. But that's the fun of being the artist. Joey can paint his own rabbit and his ears won't be so fat. So, now take your pencil if you want to adjust. If I think I should make this ear just a little less fat, we'll come over here. So, take your pencil, adjust, get your ears looking like you like them. And this is all the pencil marks we're going to make for our rabbit. We're going to use our watercolor next. So once you get them all on here, give me a thumbs up. Let me know you're ready for the watercolor. I'm going to lighten my pencil lines a little bit. Remember how I drew darker and you didn't press so dark? So I'm going to lighten up my lines just a little bit. If your lines look dark to you, you can take the eraser like I'm doing. I'm just not pressing so hard. I'm just pressing really lightly over my pencil lines so I can still see them, but it's going to lighten up my pencil a little bit so they won't show up so much. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you're ready for the watercolor. We got some rabbits appearing on your paper. Brush all my fuzzies off here. I don't want the fuzzies in my watercolor. Okay, we got rabbits ready to go. Okay, can we see him? Not if I do that, right? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna move my watercolor plate over here. I'm gonna put my paper towel here. Eraser up there. You can take the little lids off your pots of paint. Can you see my plate here if I put it here, Joey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to put my paper towel in my lap here just because I got little close quarters here, okay? So when you see me tapping my brush down here, I'm not tapping it on my clothes. Remember, watercolor when it dries will not come out of your clothes. So make sure you're covered up when we go to use the watercolor, or put a towel across your lap. My paper towel's in my lap, so when I'm patting my brush, I'm not putting watercolor on my clothes. Okay, did you take the lids off your pots of paint? There's my red. There's my yellow. Look how far watercolor goes. I painted tulips with these colors. I painted this rabbit with these colors, and I've still got all that paint left. So watercolor lasts a long time. Now, I started out making my rabbit brown because I want part of him to be brown and just have some bright spring colors kind of mixed into his fur. So, did I give you brown? I didn't. I gave you yellow, I gave you red, I gave you blue, I gave you black. We're going to make brown by using these three primary colors, blue, yellow, and red, which you can see on my color wheel here. Blue, yellow, and red. Those are our primary colors. Those colors you can't mix. You got to have those colors. If we have those three colors, supposedly we can mix every other color we need. And if you mix blue and red, you're going to get purple. You mix red and yellow, we're going to get orange. You mix yellow and blue, we're going to get green. If we mix the red with the blue with the yellow, we're going to get brown. Now, depending on how much red you use or how much blue or how much yellow, you get some different shades of brown. So I'm going to show you on my plate, and you can decide what kind of shade of brown you want. And then we'll do all kinds of different colors. We're going to start by painting our rabbit's body down here. First thing I'm going to do is wet my brush, because I've got a brand new brush here. So wet your brush. If you need to, kind of squish it down in the water. Sometimes the bristles are really stiff on a new brush. So tap it off. You got to really brush off the water on the edge of your cup. And then we're going to take a little bit of red. So take your brush. Oops, don't need that much. Scoop a little bit of red. I only need this much red. We probably won't even use that much. And then I'm going to twist my brush down on the plate. Put my red down there. Okay? Before I thin that out, I'm going to rinse that red off my brush. So swish it around in your rinse water. Get it nice and clean. Pat it dry on your paper towel. And then come over here and pick up a little yellow. So about the same amount, I'm going to take a little bit of yellow on my brush. Oh, we won't need any more than that. I'm going to put my yellow over here. Okay, then I'm going to rinse that yellow off my brush. Swish around in the water really good so you get all the yellow off. My rinse water just turned orange because it has a little hint of red in it and a little hint of yellow. Wipe the brush off on the side of your container. Pat it dry. The other color we're going to need is blue. We don't need the black out yet. So I'm going to come now. You see my blue? It's gotten a little dry. See how it's a little dry? But that's okay. It's watercolor. We're going to add water to it. So just manage to pull a little bit of it out of that dry pile. Let's see. I might just take that little piece there that's all dry. Okay. Put it down here on your plate and then rinse it out. Now my water has turned a really icky, ugly color.
Not really.
Not so ugly. Okay, tap your brush off, wipe it off on the edge, pat it dry, and I want to combine my red, my blue, and my yellow. I'm going to make a puddle of brown right in the middle of my plate here. Dip just the tip of your bristles in the water. Pick up a little bit of your red. Now, I want to thin that red out, so I'm going to add a little bit more water to it and a little bit more water to it. See how now it's getting watery? Okay. So wiggle my brush back and forth like this. That gets all the paint off and put it in my puddle. Okay, rinse my brush off. Pat it dry. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of yellow out of here. I'm going to put it down right in my red here. Mix it together. And I'm getting a nice orange color, right? Dip your brush in the water. Add a little bit more water to it because I picked up the thick yellow, didn't I? So 2 dips of water there. There we go. And I got orange. Now watch what's going to happen when I pick up the blue. Rinse your brush out again. Pat it dry. Tap it on the side of your cup. Pat it dry on your paper towel and come over here and pick up a little of this kind of dried out blue. I'm going to put it right in the puddle of orange. Now, doesn't look very brown, does it? What's it look more like? Looks very blue. So my blue is very strong. I had a lot on my brush, so I'm going to come over here and get a little bit of red. Let's add some more red to that puddle. Ooh, now what's it look like? Now it almost looks black, doesn't it? Kind of purpley black. Because now I've got a lot of red and I've got a lot of blue. So what other color can I throw in there? Let's see what happens if I put some yellow in there. I rinsed all that color off, pat it dry on my paper towel. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to get some of my yellow. And we're going to add some yellow in here. Ooh, now I turned green. Kind of a brownish green. So how about if we take a little bit more red? Aha! A little bit more red. I'm turning more brown now. That's a nice shade of brown. I kind of think I might put even a little more red. Now you're the artist. You can make whatever shade of brown you want. Ooh, look at that nice brown. Oh, I like a little bit more red in it. Look at that nice shade of brown. So it's kind of fun. We have to keep going back and forth between the red, the blue, and the yellow and get the shade you want. Now that doesn't look like much paint on my plate, but we're doing watercolor. Doesn't take much paint. Okay, so I'm going to leave this little puddle right here, and I'm going to swish my brush off. Tap it on the side of your container, wipe it off on the rim of your container, pat it dry a little bit. I'm going to leave it, I'm not going to pat my brush dry all the way, but I'm going to pick up a little bit of this brown right out of the middle of my puddle, and I'm going to come over here and do one side of my rabbit. Now, see how the edge of my rabbit isn't straight? Because we want him to look fluffy and furry, right? So I'm going to come right along that line, and I'm going to make some little lines like this so he looks fluffy. And while it's still wet, I'm going to dip my brush in the water because I want it to kind of blend. So I'm going to dip just the tip of my bristles in the water and blend some water across here. Now this is really fun. The funnest part about using watercolors is kind of experimenting like this and seeing what kind of colors we can get. I'm only working in a section about this big. I've gotten it wet with my brush. Don't wet the whole thing because it'll dry before you can do anything. Pick up a little bit more of that brown, and we can add some more little touches of brown. I'm not painting the whole thing in. I'm leaving some little open spaces. And the coolest thing about watercolor, while this color keeps soaking into the paper, it'll change a little bit. So you can put a little bit more brown. If I want the edge of him to be a little darker brown, I'm going to add a little bit more of my brown color into the side of him. We can come back and add more later. So I'm going to dip my I'm going to dip all of my bristles in the water and come over here. I got a little bit of brown on my brush still, which is okay. I'm going to wet down this other side here like this. And take a little bit more of my brown. Come over here and add some more brown on this side of him. So this is really fun. You can wet the paper, put some of your color in there. While it's wet, you can keep spreading it out. So I've now wet his whole little body here. I like my brown color, so I'm going to put a little bit more of the brown over on this side. And put a little bit of the dark brown up here under his chin. Oh, I like that. Put a little of the dark brown under his chin. Okay. Now, if you start running out of your brown color in the middle, you know how we can just pull some more color. Make another little pot of brown. But right now, I want to add a little bit more color while my paper's still a little wet there.
She said they want you to repeat what you just said.
If you start running out of brown in your little pot of color we made, just stop and pull some more red, pull some more yellow, and pull some more blue. You can mix up some more brown in the middle. I rinsed all the color out of my brush. I'm going to dip my brush in the water again, and I'm going to wet right here in the middle again. Because I want to come over here and pick up just a little bit of blue on my brush and touch just a little bit of blue into that wet. I don't want to see like a stripe of blue. That's why I wet my paper first. If the paper's wet, the watercolor kind of seeps in and blends together. So you can take your brush and you can wet an area again. And maybe I'll pick up a little bit of my red. Now, I am barely putting any color on the end of the brush. Mr. Joey's trying to get me to put the brush. Do you see how tiny little amount of red I have on there?
It won't focus on it.
Oh. So I'm going to put just a little touch of red in there. I'm going to wet my paper a little bit here. I'm not putting big puddles of water on the paper. Just wetting it a little bit. I'm coming over here into my blue and picking up just the tiniest little bit. You can't hardly even see it. So I can just put a little touch of blue. Let's wet this paper in the middle here. And then we might stop and get ourselves some clean rinse water. But I'm going to wet the middle there, and I'm going to take a little bit of red and give him some little pink. Oh, I like the pink. So the key to watercolor is having a wet area that the colors can blend into, and then they just keep fading into each other and blending in. So it gives our rabbit a really soft look. Mr. Joey just went and dumped out all my kind of dirty rinse water, because that helps. The rinse water kind of flavors what color you get. So I'm going to put a little bit more blue over here. I'll put a little red over here too. As long as the paper's wet, I got to wet my paper again a little bit right down here. And what do you think? A little bit of blue maybe? He's looking kind of furry because I'm putting my color on in just these little dabs, like fur. I'll put a little bit of red. Okay, I think for right now, because we can always come and work in this later, I think I'm going to leave his little body just like that, and I'm going to come up here and work on his head. I'm going to think of putting a little bit of brown. See all my little brown fur lines on the outside? I did those after I did all the inside first. We'll come back and put these real specific little lines on at the very end when we put whiskers and eyes on. So right now we're just going to concentrate on giving him some color in his face. So what I want to do is get your brush wet. Don't have it dripping wet. You want to tap it off on the rim. And we're going to start with his forehead up here. So get the paper wet right down to about his eyes. Sometimes it's hard to tell, since the water's clear, if you've got it wet. But if you tip it ever so slightly or look at it with the light shining on it, you can tell where the water is. Again, don't make puddles of water. Just want to wet the paper, but you want to make sure it's wet. Now I can come back in and add a little bit of my brown. See how my brown looked like it was all used up? But my wet brush is going to pick it right up. I'm going to put a little brown out at the side of his forehead here. See if you just touch the wet paper with the color, how it goes in. I don't paint the whole thing. I've left some little white splotches. I can come pick up a little bit more of the brown if I want out at the corners to be a little darker. Okay. Okay, my rabbit has a forehead. I think I'm going to stick with the brown, rinse it off, tap the water off, wipe it on your cup there. Let's get this cheek over here wet. Take a little bit of water, tip your head so you can see where you got it wet. Make sure you got the whole cheek wet. Okay, we're just going to do one cheek at a time. I'm going to come back and still use a little bit of my brown. Put a little bit of brown here. Oh, Mr. Joey says my hand's in the way. Okay, here we go. Is this better? Okay, now do you see how this, I'm seeing the lines more specifically? My paper dried out a little bit, so I'm going to put a little more water right there. While that was still wet, I went in and grabbed a little bit more water to put on here. Okay? So I'm just going to give a little brown on the side of his cheek. Let's dip your whole brush in there again, tap it off, and let's get this cheek wet over here. Remember to tip your head a little bit so you can see if you got that whole cheek wet. Okay, right up to his nose there. There we go. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my brown. And I'm going to come right along here and give it some brown color. There we go. Might give him a little bit darker brown right out here at the side. Oh, I'm kind of liking him. How's yours looking? Now, that part was dry, right? So real quick, I'll take a little bit of water right at the side before that dried all the way. Then I can blend it in. Okay. Now, he's just got a brown face. I really like my pink and blue, so I'm going to come over here and give just a little bit of pink on this cheek. My paper's still wet over here.
That's blue.
And this is my blue. Where my paper was still wet, I can put a little bit of blue in there. I can wet the paper again over on this side. Put a little bit of blue over here. You could put red. I'm going to add a little bit of red too. If you want your bunny rabbit to be just brown, you don't have to put any blue. I'll put some blue right up in the middle of his forehead. Now the forehead's dry, so what do I need to do? If I want that to blend nicely, come up here while that blue is still wet, add a little bit of water on the edges to it. I could pick up a little bit of red. Do the same thing. Let's give him a little pink forehead too. Smush a little pink in there. And maybe give him a little pink down here in his cheeks. Really, you can just dab this color with your brush, because the paper's wet and it will let it keep soaking in. Uh-oh, my paper's not wet on this side, is it? So, wet my brush. Come in here and smush that with some wet. There we go. Okay. Kind of lost his blue color. I'm going to give him a little bit more blue. And then we'll do his ears. Okay, I'm going to let his face sit there and dry for a little bit. And we're going to do his ear. We're going to do one ear at a time. I'm going to work on like a third of the ear at a time. Let's change where my paint plate is and where my rabbit is. Is that good, Joey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to use, probably be better if I put this over here, wouldn't it, Joey? Can we still see that rabbit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to move my rinse water over here so my hand's not always in front of Joey's camera. Okay, we're going to work in about a third of an ear at a time because we're going to wet this ear first. Remember how down here we started with the color first? I'm going to go in here and wet his ear, just like the bottom third of his ear. Now, when you dip your brush, I still want you to tap it a little bit on the side of your water container there. But I'm going to get it wet up to about here. Okay? Now, I'm going to just use red and blue on his ears. I'm going to start with some red. Put a little bit of red in here, right up the middle of his ear. Take a little bit of clear out here at the edge so it blends out there. I'm going to take a little bit of blue, put some blue right down in there. I'm going to get some pretty purple color showing. So I could put a little bit of blue. Maybe I'll put some more blue on the outside of his ear here. This is going to make some really pretty colors on the middle of my bunny's ear. Add a little bit of water out here at the edge so it blends. That looks pretty. Now I can wet the rest of his ear. We'll wet the rest of his ear with our clear water. And let's get some more of this red up here. Ooh, let's put a lot of red up in the top of his ear. That was a lot of paint on my brush, so I'm going to rinse some of that red off and pull some of this nice red color down into his ear here. Rinse all that red off, and I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the blue. Let's give him some nice blue up here in the top of his ear. And it's so pretty because you can just lay that watercolor down, and since the paper's wet, it'll just keep soaking in and blending in so nicely. It looks like a really pretty ear. Okay. Now I want to get this little side of his ear that I did. And I think we'll do that with a little bit of blue. There's no water on that part of his ear. So see how my watercolor shows up really solidly? It's got a little bit of water down here in it. I kind of like that little dark edge there. Okay? So for right now, I'm just going to leave that ear like that. I'm going to come back and put a little brown on it when we put his eyeballs on. But let's take and rinse all the color off your brush. Tap it off. Pat it dry just a little bit. And come in and let's wet this ear. We can do this whole bottom half of his ear. Oops. Remember, we want to brush the water out. You don't want to have a puddle standing there. If you tip your head and it looks like a big puddle, brush it out. You can brush it right over into this part if you got too much water. Okay? So when you can see that the paper's all wet, I'm going to take just a little bit of the red again and start with the middle of his ear. So we'll put a little pink in the middle of his ear. And then I think I'm going to take a little blue. Put a little blue on this outside part. See where the blue is mixed with the red and I got a little bit of purple shade there? Maybe we'll put a little blue up underneath here. And a little blue on this side. That's pretty. I love how softly the colors blend. Now, I'm going to come wet this other side of his ear. There we go. Right down there. Need a little bit more water. Wet the whole thing. Tip your head so you can see where the paper's wet. Okay? And I'm going to keep the top part of his ear a little lighter. So we're going to put just a little bit of blue up in here. Let it just soak into that water. And I might put just the littlest touch of pink down here at the bottom. But that was a lot of red. So I rinsed it off my brush, pat my brush dry, and now with my brush with no color on it, I can kind of pull that color out into my wet paper a little bit. That'll fade the color out a little bit. There we go. Okay. This is dried out just a little bit, so I'm going to come in here and add a little bit of extra blue right in his fold here, I think. And a little extra red right in there. Okay. Now, remember how I told you we're going to come back and put some lines that'll stay more defined? Oh, we forgot his little nose. Take a little bit of water on the edge of your brush. Get his little triangle nose wet. Tip your head so you can see if it's wet. Yep, mine's wet. Then take just the littlest amount of red on your brush. Give him this nice little pinky nose. Okay. Now, rinse your brush out, and we really want to pat it dry this time. Pat it dry, and we need just a little bit of black. But tell you what, we can take just the point of your brush. We can put just a little bit of water right in your black cup here with your brush. Can you see what happened? See how I just had a little water on the tip of my brush. I just want to get enough black on the tip of my brush like this. Then I'm going to paint his eyes. Notice how I left a little white spot in his eyes? So I'm going to come make this line our inside curve. And I'm going to paint his little eye in black, but I'm going to leave just a little bit of the white paper there, showing for a reflection. Now, I got a boy rabbit here. Well, this one's a boy. I might put some eyelashes. I could even put some eyelashes on this one. We'll make this a girl rabbit. So I want to come over here and paint the inside curve over here. Do the same thing. Give yourself a spot that you're going to leave with the white. And we'll give Bunny Rabbit some eyelashes over here too. Now, Rabbit needs some whiskers. You can give yourself a couple little dots. You know how on dogs' faces or rabbits' faces, they look like they have these little dots. And then take just the tip of that brush. Hold it way out here at the end so you don't press hard. And make some little whisker lines. Okay? So we gave our rabbit some whiskers. We can take that little bit of black and we can go right down from his nose here. Give a little dark shadow right there underneath, in between his cheeks. And I'm going to rinse that black off, and I'm going to pick up just a little bit more of my brown because I want to put some little details on here with my brown watercolor. So pat your brush really dry. Come back in here where your puddle of brown was. See if you can pick up enough brown off your plate there. If not, you can mix a little bit more. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to give him a little bit of lines on the side of his face. I'm going to give him a little bit of fur up here on his top of his head. Give him a little bit of fur on the side of his cheek here. And I need just a littlest bit more of brown. My brown didn't last long enough. So I'm going to quickly mix up a little bit of my yellow there. There we go, got some brown. Remember, you just keep adding whichever of those colors you need to get to brown. So I'm going to give him just a few more little wisps here. And I want to give him just a few wisps going inside his ear here. I'm going to give a few little wisps up inside this ear too. I give a little outline on the edge of his ear. And any place else we need, we can give him a few little wisps down here. And he looks like a good springtime rabbit. Looks pretty good. What do you think? Are yours looking like a rabbit? You got a question on anything? Anything we need to go over again? I'm going to let Mr. Joey pull the camera out. I might come up and put just a little bit of fur along the edge of this ear here. Okay. You can keep playing with this. Rabbits are fun to paint. If you have watercolor paper at home, you can paint yourself another rabbit today. I'm going to put that bunny rabbit up here next to this bunny rabbit. There we go, there's our rabbits. And I want to tell you a couple things. Don't forget to put the lids back on your pots of paint. Your watercolor will last. If they were getting a little dry in there, that's okay. The cool thing about watercolor is if it dries, you can reconstitute it with some water. So put the lids on your watercolor. If you've got watercolor left there, you can paint some rabbits all weekend. We need to get our big pot and draw our name today. It's Friday. We always draw a name for somebody to win a $25 credit for summer camp this summer. And Joey's going to bring my pot over. We're going to do that really quickly. While I'm swishing around, I hear see all my names. These are all the names from this week. So I'm going to pull a name out. While I'm doing that, please remind whoever does your ordering for you to go on and order their bag. It will be so much easier for Mr. Mark, Mr. Joey, and I tomorrow if the bags are already ordered. So go on and order your bags. We have a very cool thing in our activity bags next week. We're going to have a set of colored pencils for you. When you go on to order your bag for next week, you could go ahead and order your bag for the next 2 weeks after that. We've got the bags on our ordering software for all the weeks through the end of April. So if you're going on to order next week's bag, go ahead and just order your next 2 weeks after that too. And we're going to have a whole set of colored pencils in our bags. We're going to wait 1 more week to do our painting because some of our deliveries that are coming to us have had to rearrange delivery schedules so they can get medical supplies to people. So we were having to wait a little longer to get some of our supplies for painting. So we're using colored pencils next week. You'll have a whole set in your activity bag. And then the following week we'll be doing a painting together. And I've got a name here. Look at that. I swished around and I just pulled out Olivia Brockway. Hi, Olivia. So we'll put your name up here on the board, and Mom will have a $25 credit for summer camp this summer. And I want to show you one more thing. I'm going to trade Mr. Joe. He's going to take my pot, and he's going to show me a couple paintings. We're trying to figure out a good way to do an online painting party for grown-ups. Grown-ups, we need some stress relief too. And so these are a couple of the paintings. We've got about a dozen different paintings we're working on, and we are figuring out a good online interactive way that we can have a painting party at night. So keep watching for Facebook, watch for our posts, and we will tell you how this is going to work. And you can plan an evening where you can sit back and forget about what you have to do and have fun painting. So I'm going to hand those back to Mr. Joey. Be sure and go on and order your bags. We will see you for bag pickup, curbside grab and go tomorrow, Saturday, between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. Thanks. Don't forget to post pictures of your rabbits. I want to see all your colors of your rabbits. So post your rabbit pictures. Don't forget to, what's that called?
Tag
Tag us with an @IDEA Studio. And happy Easter. Bye.